Pathetic employees like you don't deserve success. That text hit my phone right as Rafael Nadal was serving for the championship on court. Philippe Chatrier. Can you believe that? Fired via text, in the middle of the French Open final. My name is Jacob Harrison. I'm 38 years old, and I had just been fired via text message, while sitting courtside at the French Open final in Paris. The message came from Riley Denton, my boss at Gravora Group, a Chicago-based technology consulting firm, where I had worked as senior strategic director for 6 years. 6 years of building relationships, landing clients, and generating revenue that kept our European division profitable. 6 years of missing family dinners to take calls with executives in London and Frankfurt. 6 years of loyalty to a company that had just discarded me like a used napkin. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 seconds. The crowd around me erupted as Nadal won the point, but everything felt muted. The second text appeared immediately after. You're fired. Clear out your desk by Monday. No phone call, no meeting, no explanation. Just a coward's way of ending someone's career, while they were on what should have been a well-earned reward trip. Want to know the worst part? I had earned this Paris trip by landing our biggest client contract in company history 8 months earlier, on Jake's Revenge. Nexera Labs had signed a 3-year deal worth $12 million in consulting fees. Riley had personally handed me the Roland Garros ticket package at our quarterly meeting, shaking my hand in front of the entire team and calling me the future of international business development. Now, he was texting me like a teenager breaking up with his girlfriend. The man sitting next to me in the premium seating section glanced over. He was older, maybe 55, wearing an expensive watch and a calm expression that suggested he was used to being in important places. I had seen his face somewhere before, but couldn't place it immediately. Everything all right? He asked quietly, his accent distinctly British. I looked at him more carefully. Recognition hit me like a cold wave. Gerard Bellamy, Chief Executive Officer of Lunar Ventures, our biggest competitor in the European technology consulting market. We had spoken briefly at a conference in Amsterdam 2 years ago, but I remembered him well. His company had been trying to poach our clients for the better part of a decade. Just work, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. But something in my gut told me this moment was about to become much more significant than a simple firing. Riley Denton had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life, and he didn't even know it yet. Curious how this one text could unravel an entire empire? Stick with Jake's Revenge to find out. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I had built Gravora Group's European operations from nothing. When I started 6 years ago, we had 0 international clients and no presence outside the Chicago metropolitan area. Riley hired me specifically to change that, promising equity stakes and partnership opportunities that never materialized. My background was in enterprise software implementation, but I had a talent for understanding how European businesses operated differently from American companies. I spent 2 years learning German and French, traveling constantly, and building relationships with technology executives across 12 countries. The results spoke for themselves. In 6 years, I had brought in 43 major clients with a combined contract value of $78 million. Our European division now represented 37% of Gravora Group's total revenue. But Riley had always been threatened by my success. He was the type of executive who demanded credit for every victory while distancing himself from any failure. When Nexera Labs initially rejected our proposal 18 months ago, Riley publicly blamed my cultural misunderstanding of their needs. When I eventually won them back with a revised strategy, he told the board it was his leadership that made the difference. The warning signs had been building for months. Riley stopped including me in senior leadership meetings. He hired his nephew, Trevor Denton, as Assistant Director of European Relations without consulting me. Trevor had 0 international experience and spoke only English, but he was family. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that Riley had been taking client calls that should have gone through me. When I confronted him about it, he said he was streamlining communications and that I shouldn't worry about matters above my pay grade. My wife Catherine had noticed the change in my demeanor. "He's setting you up for something," she said after I told her about the nephew situation. "Men like that don't bring in family unless they're planning to push someone out." I had dismissed her concerns. After 6 years of generating revenue and building the European business, I thought my position was secure. I had client relationships that would be impossible to replace quickly. I had institutional knowledge about European markets that Riley needed. I was wrong. What I didn't know was that Trevor had been systematically working to undermine my client relationships. He had convinced Riley that I was going native and putting European client interests ahead of company profits. He suggested that my frequent travel was excessive and that most of my responsibilities could be handled remotely by someone based in Chicago. The Roland Garros trip was supposed to be recognition for my achievements. Instead, it was apparently Riley's way of getting me out of the country while they prepared my termination. But Riley had made one critical miscalculation. He fired me while I was sitting next to the one person who could turn his power play into a catastrophic business mistake. I pulled my phone out again and reread Riley's messages. The words felt even more insulting the second time. Pathetic employees like you don't deserve success. The arrogance was breathtaking. Gerard Bellamy was still watching the match, but I could sense his attention had shifted slightly in my direction. He was the kind of executive who noticed everything, and my reaction to those text messages hadn't been subtle enough. The full weight of what had just happened began to settle in. Riley hadn't just fired me, he had humiliated me. The timing was calculated to cause maximum damage. Firing me while I was in Paris meant I couldn't defend myself, couldn't gather documents, couldn't speak to clients or colleagues before word spread through the office. But as I sat there watching Nadal celebrate his victory, something shifted inside me. The initial shock and hurt were transforming into something colder and more focused. Riley had underestimated me completely. I thought about my client relationships. Nexera Labs had specifically requested that I remain their primary contact throughout the contract period. Klaus Baer at Christensen Global had told me just last month that he considered me irreplaceable. Marie Dubois at Hologate Systems had been pushing for a contract extension specifically because she trusted my oversight of their implementation. These weren't just business relationships. They were partnerships built on 6 years of trust, competence, and cultural understanding. Riley seemed to think he could simply inherit them by firing me and installing his nephew. He was about to learn otherwise. I glanced at Gerard Bellamy again. Lunar Ventures had been trying to break into the American consulting market for years, but they lacked the client relationships and cultural knowledge to compete effectively with established firms like Gravora Group. What if they suddenly had access to both? The crowd began filing out as the trophy ceremony concluded. Gerard stood up and stretched, then looked at me directly. "Forgive me for being presumptuous," he said. "But you look like a man who just received some very unpleasant news." I made a decision that would change everything. "Actually," I said, standing up and extending my hand. "I think I just received the best news of my career. I'm Jacob Harrison, formerly of Gravora Group." He smiled and shook my hand. Gerard Bellamy, Lunar Ventures, and I suspect that formerly is about to become very significant. I pulled out my phone and showed him Riley's messages. Gerard read them twice, his expression growing more interested with each word. "Well," he said finally, "this is quite fortunate timing. Would you be interested in continuing this conversation over dinner? I know an excellent restaurant near the Louvre." The game had just begun, and Riley had no idea he was about to lose everything, on Jake's revenge. By Sunday evening, I was back in Chicago with a job offer from Lunar Ventures that exceeded my wildest expectations. Gerard had made it clear that he wanted me to lead their new American expansion, offering a 30% salary increase and equity stakes that Riley had promised but never delivered. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the kind of cold that cuts through your jacket. I walked into the Gravora Group offices for what I knew would be the last time. Riley was waiting in the conference room with Trevor and our human resources director, Patricia Wells. "Jacob," Riley said as I entered, his tone artificially cheerful. "How was Paris?" "Educational," I replied, taking a seat across from him. Patricia slid a termination packet across the table. "Standard severance, non-compete agreements, return of company property." Nothing generous, but nothing illegal either. I think you'll find everything in order, Riley said. We've decided to restructure the European division under Trevor's leadership. Your services are no longer required. Trevor sat there smirking like he had just won a prize. He was 26 years old with an MBA from a second-tier school and precisely zero international business experience. What about my clients? I asked. They're company clients, Riley said. Trevor will be handling all European relationships going forward. I signed the paperwork without argument. Riley looked surprised by my compliance. I have to say, Jacob, I expected more pushback from you. This is refreshing. No point fighting the inevitable, I said, standing up and shaking his hand. I wish you the best with the European market. What Riley didn't know was that I had spent Sunday making phone calls, not to clients yet. That would come later. But I had contacted my lawyer, reviewed my employment agreements, and confirmed that my non-compete clause only applied to direct competitors in the Chicago metropolitan area. Lunar Ventures was based in London. I cleaned out my desk while Trevor watched from across the office. He made a point of sitting at my old desk and loudly discussing European strategy with anyone who would listen. The performance was pathetic, but I let him have his moment. By Tuesday morning, the real damage began. Klaus Baer from Christensen Global called the main office asking to speak with me about a contract modification. Patricia transferred him to Trevor, who spent 15 minutes trying to explain why he was now Klaus's primary contact. Klaus hung up and immediately called my personal cell phone. Jacob, what is happening at your company? This young man knows nothing about our agreement. There have been some changes in management, I told him. I can't discuss specifics right now, but I'll be in touch soon. Similar calls came from 3 other clients that week. Marie Dubois was particularly direct. If you are no longer with Gravora Group, we need to discuss our contract immediately. Riley began to panic by Thursday. He called my cell phone 6 times, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about misunderstandings and rash decisions. Trevor had apparently managed to offend 2 clients and completely bungle a conference call with a potential new account. The breaking point came Friday morning when Nexera Labs sent a formal letter requesting termination of their $12 million contract due to material changes in account management. Riley showed up at my apartment that evening. This is ridiculous, Jacob. You're destroying relationships out of spite. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm simply not available to save you from your nephew's incompetence. What do you want? More money? A better title? I want nothing from you, Riley. You made your choice in Paris. He left looking like a man who had just realized he had made a catastrophic mistake. But it was too late. The damage was done, and I was just getting started on Jake's revenge. Saturday morning brought a call from Patricia Wells. She sounded exhausted. Jacob, I need to ask you something confidentially. Did you know about Trevor's hiring before it was announced? No. Why? Because I've been reviewing the paperwork and some things don't add up. Riley backdated Trevor's employment to 3 months ago, but his first day was actually 2 weeks ago, and his salary is higher than yours was. This was new information. I had assumed Trevor's hiring was simply nepotism, but Patricia was suggesting something more calculated. What else did you find? Riley's been intercepting your client emails for 6 weeks. He set up a forwarding rule that copied everything to his account, and he's been telling people that you were planning to quit anyway. The picture became clearer. Riley hadn't fired me impulsively. He had been planning this for months, systematically undermining my position while preparing Trevor to take over. The Paris trip wasn't a reward. It was a convenient way to get me out of the country while he completed the transition. Patricia continued, there's more. Riley's been negotiating with a consulting firm in Berlin about acquiring our European client list. He told them you were unreliable and that the company needed professional management of international relationships. Now I understood. Riley wasn't just replacing me with his nephew. He was planning to sell the European division to a German firm and cash out while taking credit for the business I had built. When is this supposed to happen? The preliminary agreement was signed 2 weeks ago. Full transfer is scheduled for next month. Riley had played this perfectly. Fire me, install Trevor as a temporary placeholder, then sell the entire operation to the German firm for a significant profit. Trevor would probably get a bonus and a recommendation letter, while Riley would look like a strategic genius who had successfully monetized the European expansion. There was just one problem with his plan: the clients. European business culture values personal relationships and continuity. Klaus Baer wasn't going to accept some random German consulting firm just because Riley Denton said it was a good idea. Marie Dubois would terminate her contract before working with people she had never met. The Norwegian pharmaceutical company that had been negotiating a new deal would walk away immediately. Riley had calculated the financial value of the client contracts, but he had completely misunderstood what made those relationships valuable in the first place. I called Gerard Bellamy in London. Gerard, I need to accelerate our timeline. Something significant is happening with Gravora Group's European operations. What kind of something? I explained Riley's plan to sell the division to a German firm. Gerard was quiet for a long moment. That's actually perfect for us, he said finally. If he's planning to sell, it means he's already given up on managing those relationships himself. And if the clients are unhappy with the transition, they'll be looking for alternatives. Exactly. How quickly can you start? I can be in London by Wednesday. Excellent. I'll have legal draft your employment agreement. And Jacob, start making a list of every client relationship you can transfer. We're going to turn Riley's master plan into the biggest gift our company has ever received. Riley thought he was playing chess, but he had just handed his opponent every piece on the board. I flew to London on Tuesday night and spent Wednesday morning in Gerard's office finalizing my employment agreement. The terms were better than I had expected. Director of American Operations, significant equity stake, and complete autonomy over client relationships. Gerard had done his homework. Lunar Ventures had been trying to break into the American market for 3 years, but they lacked the relationships and cultural knowledge to compete with established firms. Hiring me solved both problems immediately. Your timing is remarkable, Gerard said as we reviewed the contract. We've been building our American infrastructure for months, but we needed someone who understood both markets. By Thursday, I was making calls. Klaus Baer was my first contact. I explained that I had joined Lunar Ventures and would be continuing to support his technology implementation from London. This is much better, Klaus said. Lunar Ventures has an excellent reputation in Europe. When can we transfer the contract? I'll have our legal team contact you next week. Marie Dubois was equally receptive. She had been frustrated with Trevor's lack of knowledge and was relieved to learn that I would continue managing her account. Finally, someone who understands our business, she said. Send me the transfer documents immediately. The Norwegian pharmaceutical company was more cautious, but they agreed to a meeting. The potential $12 million contract that Riley thought he was selling to the German firm was actually still available. By Friday, I had confirmed transfer agreements with 6 major clients representing $42 million in contracted revenue. 3 more clients wanted to schedule meetings to discuss moving their accounts. Riley had no idea what was happening. Trevor was apparently still trying to convince clients that he could handle their needs. While Riley was finalizing details with the German consulting firm, the trap was set perfectly on Jake's revenge. Monday morning brought chaos to the Gravora Group offices. Klaus Baer's legal team sent termination notices for 3 separate contracts. Marie Dubois requested immediate return of all proprietary documents. The Norwegian pharmaceutical company cancelled their negotiation meeting. Riley called me at 9 a.m. What the hell are you doing, Jacob? I'm working for Lunar Ventures now. My clients chose to follow me. You can't do this. You have a non-compete agreement. I checked with my lawyer. Lunar Ventures is based in London, not Chicago. The non-compete doesn't apply to international companies. The silence on the other end lasted almost 30 seconds. You're destroying the European division. No, Riley, you destroyed it when you fired me via text message. I'm just helping my clients find better service. Tuesday brought more termination notices. By Wednesday, the German consulting firm was asking serious questions about the value of acquiring a European division with no clients. Thursday morning, Patricia Wells called again. Riley's having a complete meltdown. The German deal is falling apart. Trevor quit yesterday, and the board is asking for explanations. What kind of explanations? How we lost 70% of our European revenue in 1 week? Friday afternoon, Gerard called with an update. The Norwegian pharmaceutical company wants to move forward with us. They're offering $15 million over 3 years. Excellent. And Jacob, I just received a very interesting phone call from someone named Patricia Wells. She says she's interested in discussing employment opportunities with Lunar Ventures. Riley's empire was crumbling, and the best people were jumping ship before it sank completely. The man who had called me pathetic was about to learn what failure actually looked like. The final blow came exactly 3 weeks after Riley had fired me in Paris. Gerard called me into his office with news that made everything worthwhile. Gravora Group's board just voted Riley out as regional director. Apparently, losing $87 million in contracted revenue was considered a fireable offense. I felt a quiet satisfaction, but no joy. Riley had brought this on himself through arrogance and poor judgment. There's more, Gerard continued. Trevor Denton is apparently telling people that you sabotaged the European division out of spite. Some of your former colleagues are asking questions about his version of events. I had expected this. Riley and Trevor needed someone to blame for their failure, and I was the obvious target. Let me guess, I said. They're claiming I stole clients illegally. Exactly. But here's what they don't know. Patricia Wells has been documenting everything. Email forwards, backdated employment records, the attempted sale to the German firm. She's prepared to testify that Riley had been planning your termination for months. The irony was perfect. Riley's methodical planning had created a paper trail that proved his actions were calculated rather than reactive. If he had simply fired me honestly, he might have retained some clients. Instead, his deception had made my departure look justified to everyone involved. What happens now? Patricia starts with us next month as European Operations Manager. Klaus Baer is recommending us to 2 companies in Munich, and the Norwegian pharmaceutical deal is expanding to include their sister company in Oslo. Riley's text message from Paris had cost him everything. His job, his reputation, and the business division he had tried to steal. Meanwhile, Lunar Ventures had gained a foothold in the American market worth over $100 million in potential revenue. Justice had been served quietly, professionally, and completely, on Jake's revenge. 6 months later, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my London office when Catherine called from Chicago. You'll never guess who I saw at the grocery store yesterday, she said. Riley. He was bagging groceries at the supermarket near our old apartment. He looked terrible. I felt no satisfaction from Riley's downfall. Destroying someone's career brings no lasting peace, even when they deserve it, but I had learned something valuable about loyalty, timing, and the importance of treating people with basic respect. Lunar Ventures had exceeded all expectations. We had landed 14 major American clients and opened offices in Boston and Seattle. The Norwegian pharmaceutical contract had grown into a partnership that spanned 5 countries. Most importantly, I had found a company that valued competence over politics. Gerard treated me as an equal partner, not a threat to his authority. Our success was shared success, not a zero-sum competition. Catherine joined me in London in the spring. We bought a house in Hampstead and started talking about children. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something permanent rather than just surviving someone else's ambitions. The Roland Garros tournament returned to Paris in June. Gerard gave me tickets again, but this time I watched from the corporate hospitality suite that Lunar Ventures had purchased. Rafael Nadal won his 14th French Open title that day. As he lifted the trophy, I thought about how much my life had changed since the previous year. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Riley's text message had set me free, even though that wasn't his intention. I never thanked him for it, but maybe I should have. Thanks for watching Jake's Revenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of triumph and justice.